We've been waiting a few years now for the release of For Honor, and it's finally getting close, but before you play, there are some things you should definitely know. I'm Andrew the New Guy, and today in gameranx we're here to talk about 10 things you need to know before playing For Honor. Up first, number 10, we have the different factions. For Honor has 3 factions that you can play as: the Knights, the Samurai, and the Vikings. Each faction has 4 heroes, with more coming post-launch. And while each faction does have similar heroes, each one does play a little different, and they all have their own play styles. Now, I'm not going to run through each faction's heroes, because each faction does have heroes that are very similar, and it's only the smallest differences that set them apart. So essentially, every faction pretty much has a heavy, a medium, and a light hero. You could also say that each one might be an easy, medium, or hard hero. Each faction also has a 4th one, which is more of a wild card, and each one of those 3 have a more specific playstyle than the other 3 heroes in each faction. So there really are a ton of different playstyles to choose from, and seeing that they do get pretty specific, you'll really have to figure out which one best suits your playstyle, and that's before you start getting more gear and weapons, and you have to figure out which stats go along best with whatever playstyle you choose. And up next, number 9, we have the customization. For Honor lets you customize your warrior in different ways, and that doesn't just affect you cosmetically, but it also affects you stat-wise too. You get different gear from loot drops that you acquire from playing the game, or that you can purchase using a currency that's earned in-game called steel. There's standard gray items, rare blue items, and legendary purple items, and you can also upgrade pieces of your armor and your weapons, and it'll cost you steel, but by doing so, you can upgrade the stats on each piece, and you can also change the look of your gear. So if you have a helmet that has better stats, but it isn't as pretty looking as your last helmet, you can keep the stats but take on the look of the other helmet. It isn't just weapons and armor that you can customize. There's also different colors, patterns, emblems, helmet ornaments, armor engravings, and materials and outfits that you can unlock through loot drops and leveling up your hero. There's also different perks that each class has that you can swap in and out to further suit your playstyle, and you can also make and design your own player emblem as well. So they really do give you a bunch of different options that can help you really make your character look the way you want them to look and how you want them to play. And up next, number 8, we have the different editions of the game. Games nowadays come in so many different editions that it can get a little confusing to know what's in what edition, and For Honor, it's no different. There's a ton of different ways to buy it. There's the standard edition, which is just the game itself and nothing else. There's the deluxe edition, which has the game, 3 unique helmet crests, a special execution effect, and a special emblem, and a 7-day champion status. There's the gold edition that has everything in the deluxe edition, plus the season pass. Then there's the gold collector edition that's available through the Ubisoft store that has everything the gold edition has, plus the soundtrack, an exclusive lithograph, and a really cool set of helmets. Then there's the Apollyon collector's edition that's available only through GameStop, and it comes with everything the standard gold edition has, plus a 14-inch statue of Apollyon, who's the main antagonist of the game, a lithograph, and the Origins note, which gives you a bit of a background story on Apollyon. So yeah, there's a ton of different editions out there, each coming with a bunch of different physical and digital content. And next up, at number 7, there are 2 important things to know that you might overlook. First off, there was originally going to be split-screen co-op, but the developer decided to cut it. One of the producers said, and I quote, "It was a feature that we loved, but when we looked at what needs to be done to support online co-op, it was critical to make a decision now so we can polish all the features at the AAA level and make sure we're the most amazing experience." This is a huge bummer, I think, personally. Couch co-op games are few and far between, and this could have been a really good one. And the second piece of news that is kind of a bummer is that the game will require an online connection. So even if you're playing the solo campaign or playing against bots, you'll always have to be online to play, which is something that I know a lot of people aren't going to like. I mean, it doesn't affect me. I will be playing it online, so it's fine. But there are people out there who might not have an internet connection and really want to play this game solely for the campaign and solely just to play with bots, and those people can't if they don't have an internet connection. And up next, number 6, we have the post-launch and season pass. So it looks like Ubisoft is going to take the Rainbow Six Siege route for the post-launch plans. There is going to be a season pass, but most of that content is going to be free to non-season pass holders as well. The season pass is going to get you access to the heroes and maps a full week before everyone else gets to play them. And when they are available, if you don't have a season pass, it'll cost you steel, the in-game currency, to unlock those heroes. With the season pass, you'll also get XP boosts, an exclusive emote, scavenger crates, and there's a ton of other things you're going to get as well. And just like Siege, For Honor is going to be split into 4 seasons, with a new one starting every 3 months or so, and every 2 seasons you'll get 2 new heroes and 2 new maps. There's also going to be new pieces of armor and weapons released as well. Like I said before, this is how Siege released all of their content, and I think it was the perfect way to distribute all of it. Getting new operators and new maps every few months was perfect to keep me coming back to it, and it did so well that it's moving on to a whole new year of content, with new operators and new maps just launching the other day. So it's proven to work, and hopefully For Honor is able to take that structure and make it work as well. Up next, number 5, we have the story story mode. So even though the main focus for this game is multiplayer, there is also going to be a campaign with a story that is fully playable by yourself or co-op. And from what I've gathered, the story seems okay, I guess. There's a warlord named Apollyon who I guess is upset that the Vikings, knights, and samurai live in peace and having her eyes gone soft. So she feels that it's up to her to start a war to get the three of them fighting. Now, in the trailer, she's asked who she thinks she is, and her answer is war, and she isn't wrong because that's what she does in the campaign. She just brings war. She starts a war between three different factions. So, I mean, I guess it sounds cool. It doesn't sound like anything crazy. Apollyon basically just thinks everyone's a wimp now and she wants to toughen them up a bit. I mean, I wasn't expecting like a story of the year, so this makes sense. But yeah, I maybe wouldn't buy this game for an award-winning story. This is definitely something you're going to purchase for the multiplayer experience. Up next, number 4, we have Faction Wars. Now, Faction Wars is a metagame that's bundled in with For Honor. Upon starting it up, you're prompted to pick a faction to fight for, the Samurai, Vikings, or the Knights. But don't worry, if you pick the fight for the Knights, you'll still be able to play as Viking and Samurai. So the way this works is the world map is split into 3 territories, each controlled by one of the 3 factions. And the way to win the faction war is to control the most amount of territory by the end of the season, which will last about 10 weeks. And the way you gain territory is by just killing it on the battlefield when you're playing. So you're going to want to fight your heart out and try to win every round you can, obviously. And by winning, you'll gain war assets. And you can choose to spend those war assets on attacking enemy territory or defending your own. And every 6 hours, you'll be able to check your progress and see exactly where your faction stands. So the more you win, the more territory you control. Ultimately, that leads to victory. Simple as that. And when the season ends, if your faction wins, you'll be rewarded with XP, steel, which is the in-game currency, and maybe even faction war exclusive gear. But at the end of the season, everyone will get something. There's a first, second, and third place ranking. So even if you do play and you put the time into it and you lose, you still get something for your effort, which is nice that everybody wins. And one thing that is really cool is that this is cross-platform. So while you won't be fighting with other players on different systems, you will all be working together to control as much territory as you can and win the faction war. Up next, number 3, we have the different multiplayer modes. For Honor ships with 5 different multiplayer modes. Maybe we'll get some more in future DLC. I haven't seen anything about that yet. There's Dominion mode, which is a 4v4 battle where you'll be scoring points by capturing different points and controlling them for as long as you can, and by killing NPCs and heroes. Now, once you hit 1,000 points, the losing team is no longer able to spawn unless they kill enemies or recapture areas, but once the losing team is wiped out, that's the end. And this goes for the other team as well. So if both teams hit 1,000 points at the same time, both teams aren't going to be able to respawn, and at that point, it's just a fight into the last man standing. There's also duel mode where you'll go up against one other player in a 1v1 duel, and there's no perks involved. The only thing that's going to get you through this is your skill in the melee combat. Next up is Brawl, which is a 2v2 version of duel with no team respawns. Then there's Skirmish, and the only way you score points here is by taking out other players. And finally, there's the Elimination mode, which is the 4v4 variant of duel mode. And just like Brawl, there's no respawns, and there's different ways to approach this mode. You can either all work together and storm each enemy one by one and take them out like that and gang up on them, or you can split up and you can each try to take on one enemy at a time. And up next, number 2, we have the combat. The biggest question that I had before playing it was how exactly the combat worked. Now, there are 2 different types of combat here. First one, when you're taking on NPCs, the combat is a bit more generic, like hack and slashy, but you do look awesome doing it. There's a few different animations and they all look really cool. I love watching when my warden grabs his sword by the blade and starts rocking dudes in the face with the hilt. It's super cool to see. But the combat does change a bit when you face off against another player. Ubisoft is using a combat mechanic that they're calling the art of battle. And the way it works does really require you to know what you're doing and also have really good reaction times. So when you're squaring up with an opponent, you'll notice 3 different reticles on the screen, right, left, and up. And you use the right stick to position your weapon in one of those 3 directions. And you'll use that to decide which way you'll attack. You'll also have to use it to defend as well. So when your enemy attacks, you'll see a red reticle pop up on the screen, and that's the direction they're attacking in. So then you'll have to move your weapon in that direction to block that attack. So your attack and your defense is tied into one analog stick, and I think this is the best way to make sword-based combat like this really work. And finally, at number 1, we're just going to wrap things up. First off, Ubisoft has released the minimum PC requirements. You'll need at least a modern-day dual-core CPU with 4 gigs of RAM, a 64-bit operating system, and an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 660 or an AMD Radeon HD 6970 in order to play the game on low settings with 720p and 30 frames per second. The game is releasing on February 14th on PC, PS4, and Xbox One, but there is going to be one more open beta from February 9th to the 12th. So if you're interested in playing playing it before picking it up, this is your last chance. And those are 10 things you need to know about For Honor. If there are any things that you guys want to know or some things that maybe we left out, please leave it down in the comments below. And hitting that like button really does help us out. And if you guys didn't already know, we put videos up like this every single day, and the best way to get them is with a subscription. And once again, I'm Andrew the New Guy, and I'll see you guys next time right here on gameranx.